Hello guys, what is happening, and welcome to this live stream. So we are discussing about what the World Economic Forum and the UN has come out, and they basically said that central banks need to stop raising interest rates. Now, I'm happy to report that New Zealand has not listened to their call because they just hiked 50 basis points. But Australia was expected to hike 50 basis points and they backpedaled. And I've got a video coming out about that at the weekend. But first thing I want to show you guys is what the Fed is currently saying. And this is a clip from the FOMC question and answers after they raised by 75 basis points. So take a look at this.
We have got to get inflation behind us. I wish there were a painless way to do that. There isn't. So what we need to do is get rates up to the point where we're putting meaningful downward pressure on inflation, and that's what we're doing. And we certainly don't hope. We certainly haven't given up the idea that we can have a relatively modest increase in unemployment. Nonetheless, we need to complete this task.
And that is the Fed essentially coming out and saying that we don't care. We don't care if we cause unemployment. We know that there's going to be pain with this inflation fight that they are deciding to go with. And the thing is, you have to think of some of these central banks are in more of a fight for their credibility because they got the inflation is transitory argument completely wrong. They started raising rates really late into the game. I mean, New Zealand's an example of that because they started before everybody else, and all they've done is 50 basis points hikes every single meeting. And because they started earlier, they've only had to do 50 basis points. They haven't had to do 75 basis points and 100 basis points moves like we've seen elsewhere. Now, what's really interesting about the UN is how the World Economic Forum is in there and the two are tied together. And I'm going to show you this, and it's right there on their website. This is a tinfoil hat. This is not tinfoil hat stuff. It's all on their website. I'm going to show you. But first, let's see exactly what they're saying. So, don't raise interest rates. UN warns Federal Reserve and other central banks. The UK economy is forecast to contract 0.9% in 2023, the UN agency said, amid a series of headwinds resulting from Brexit and international conditions. So the UN has called on central banks not to increase interest rates and depart from the monetary policy being pursued by a large number of Western regulators, including the Bank of England. The Trade and Development Report 2022, published by UNCTAD on Monday, expressed worries that an unduly rapid tightening of monetary policy in advanced economies in combination with inadequate multilateral support could turn a slowdown into a recession. Well, we basically just had the Fed in that clip that I just showed you there admitting that there is going to be a recession. I mean, they have practically put their growth targets for this year 0.2%, which is pretty much, you know, it might as well be negative in that point. And we're already in a recession. We already know that. So I don't know why they're still, the media is just unable to accept that we're in a recession. They have to see blood on the streets before that, I think. And then when they can no longer paper over that there is definitely a recession, that's when they finally accept this. So why do they do that? And I think more of the reason of why they actually do that is just because of political reasons. These news media organizations are really just pandering to politicians. You know, Sky News is incredibly linked to the Conservative government in England. A lot of the media organizations are linked to the government in Canada, and the same goes for in the US, and I'm sure it's the same all over the world. So you have to take a lot of these media articles with a grain of salt. But it's interesting to see what the UN actually wants here. So they say, The actions of the American central bank, the Federal Reserve, known as the Fed, were specifically addressed by the report for hurting growth. This year's interest rate hikes in the United States are set to cut an estimated $360 billion of future income for developing countries, excluding China, and signal even more trouble ahead. So one question that I'd like to ask you guys, and you can drop it in the comments, do these central banks have a duty to developing countries? Do they have a duty? And that's honestly an open question there, because it's not something that I know. And I'm honestly interested to hear what your responses are to that. But, you know, it is really interesting because obviously the Fed is the central bank of the reserve currency of the world. So they, I guess, do have more of a duty for the entire global economy than other central banks. However, the problem is they've become heavily politicized now, and these organizations have become massively corrupted by politicians and central planning. And this is the problem with everything that goes on. It's the corruption. You know, people laugh about the corruption in Mexico and South America, but it's happening right here at home, guys. You just got to wake up and realize it. I mean, for Christ's sake, here in Canada, the Deputy Prime Minister is a trustee on the World Economic Forum. That's not a tinfoil hat. How on earth is she allowed to be in government whilst she is a trustee at the World Economic Forum? That is a complete conflict of interest, because the World Economic Forum is a power type play organization that has its own interests. And you are definitely seeing those interests come through into Canada. Canada has been like the proving ground for a lot of the things that have happened over the course of the past couple of years that have gone by. So I think that is really key to recognize, that corruption is why summits and saying, I'm all about climate change, and then he's on a yacht straight after, flying on a private jet. Like, what is that? That is just corruption. That is just lack of integrity. Yet people look at these people and go, oh, he's famous. I loved him in the Titanic. Well, the Titanic is the economy right now, so as we discussed in the last live stream. So let's see what else they're saying here. Instead of increasing interest rates to fight inflation, policymakers should put in place price caps funded by one-off taxes on unusually large profits being made by energy companies, lead author Richard Colesall-Wright told the Wall Street Journal. So there you go. Price caps are the answer to all problems. These central planners, they always have some sort of solution that is out there, and this is their solution. It's just put in price caps, and that's not going to work for just basic economic principles. And it's been done in the past. It's been done in the past, and it fails to work. You're going to lead to companies not wanting to produce the product, which further compounds the supply, and then the demand, well, that doesn't fall back because the price is controlled. So it artificially distorts the economy even more, which we know is what these central planners love to do. And one has got to ask the question, with all this stupidity that is going on right now, one has got to ask the question, like, do they, I think it's obvious at this point that they are trying to do something, but it looks like they're trying to destroy the economy rather than actually fix the problems that we have today. Because I've said many, many times, but we can look at the past and see what's worked and what hasn't worked in order to kind of get a gauge on what works and doesn't work for the future. And price controls is one of those things that doesn't work. So let's talk about energy, because this is something the UK is doing, some sort of price cap on energy, and I'm sure other countries will do the same. It's a form of a stimulus package. So if the government comes out and they say, okay, we're going to stop your energy bills, so they go no more than $1,000, so you won't pay more than $1,000 in a month, let's say, just for argument's sake. So then you decide, well, it doesn't matter then. I can just use as much as I want. And really, if you only use $500 a month, who's that benefiting? That's benefiting people who live in massive houses and have large energy consumptions, who will just go, well, I'm just going to continue using. So the thing is, the reason why prices fluctuate is supply and demand. If there's little supply, then companies have to make that extra profit in order to meet the profit expectations that they had in the past when they were making more products with less profit. So now they're making less products, so they need to implement more profit to get to the same point. And essentially, just by incentivizing them not to do that, not to make more products, by implementing price controls and then taxing the energy companies as well, well, that doesn't really work. You can see how that argument is completely flawed. But specifically, the UN is one organization that is corrupted by the World Economic Forum, and it's right here on their website. This is in 2019. World Economic Forum and UN signed strategic partnership. So what is this? This partnership identifies 6 areas of focus: financing the 2030 agenda, climate change, health, digital cooperation, gender equality, and empowerment of women, education, and skills to strengthen and broaden their combined impact by building on existing and new collaborations. So we know from the World Economic Forum what their values are. And, it was just yesterday I was watching a interview with some bankers in Davos that were basically saying how inflation is a good thing because it's going to inflate all our debts away and we can get to these green targets much, much faster than if we didn't have inflation. So inflation should actually be a good thing, despite what they don't say is inflation affects the poorest people in your society. Like there is 51% of Canadians can't even afford to buy groceries right now. I put a short out of this recently, and I've been driving through that Angus Reid poll, which is kind of shocking, and I'm sure it's the same in other countries. Credit card debt is absolutely exploding because the cost of living is out of control. And as I've said many, many times, it doesn't matter whether you choose inflation or interest rate hikes. Interest rate hikes just expedite the pain in towards getting to the end goal, which is economic collapse anyway. But inflation, interest rate hikes, you get to the same point at the end of the day. And another interesting clip that I want to show you guys is obviously this one, which a lot of people have heard many, many times. So I'll just show you this.
But what we know is that we will end up with many more unemployed. Definitively a lot of anger already now, but probably increased by the end of the year, because this crisis will be with us until we really have found a remedy. So we have to prepare for a more angry world, but we should be aware we are just increasing our debt situation. And we were already very much debt loaded before we went into the crisis. So how to get at the end out of this debt situation is still a big question mark.
So yeah, that was our friend Klaus Schwab, who is basically saying we need to prepare for a more angry world. Well, he's not wrong there, is he? Because if you have rapidly high inflation, you are going to have an angry world. And with everything that's happening right now and the economic collapses that are coming and are already in motion, the wheels are already turning on them, you are going to have way more people unemployed. So how did he predict the future on that one? Little bit strange in my opinion. But you know what? It is kind of crazy, the junction that we're at, where you've essentially got these corrupt organizations like the UN coming out and saying, hey, everybody do this. We're this unelected organization and you should do this because we say so. And then you look and, oh, look, they're tied to the World Economic Forum. Surprise, surprise. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, maybe you'll enjoy that video. Maybe you'll enjoy that video. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.